My wife betrayed me with a man who then tried to destroy my life. But now I know everything, and they have no idea what's coming. Rachel was my world, but her affair with Liam was just the tip of the iceberg. They used me as part of their scheme, but this time, I'm holding all the cards. Betrayal, revenge, and the ultimate question. Can I start over with someone who was once part of their game too? Want to know how it all ends? Stick with me until the end. Jason walked into his office, clutching a dark blue envelope that had just been delivered by a courier. He hadn't yet figured out why his heart sank the moment he noticed the envelope was addressed not only to him, but also to his wife, Rachel. Their names were written side by side, in handwriting, as if someone knew how to pique his curiosity. Maybe it's something from the bank, he thought. But the envelope bore no logos. It carried an air of mystery. Before opening it, Jason glanced around at his colleagues. The office hummed with routine activity. Someone was on the phone, someone else typing away at their keyboard. He sat at his desk, placed the envelope beside his monitor, and started sorting through his mail. Yet within minutes, his eyes were drawn back to it. He opened the envelope. Inside was a single photograph. It was Rachel, sitting in a cafe. She was holding hands with a man Jason didn't recognize. Their faces were illuminated by the cafe's warm, yellow lights, and their smiles were so genuine that for a moment Jason thought the image might have been doctored. But alongside the photo was something else, a small note with a brief yet chilling message. Think about whether you truly know her. Jason couldn't believe it. This has to be some mistake. A joke? He told himself. But something about the way the envelope was prepared and the names written made him want to investigate further. He snapped a picture of the photograph with his phone, tucked the envelope into his desk drawer, and decided not to say anything to Rachel until the evening. At home, everything seemed normal. Rachel was cooking dinner, music played in the background, and she looked so happy that Jason couldn't bring himself to bring up the photo. But her phone lay nearby on the table, flashing with new messages. His hand moved toward it instinctively when she stepped into the kitchen. Rachel had received a message from someone named Liam. The text was short. This weekend was amazing. I can't wait for our next meeting. Who is this Liam? Jason thought, his stomach tightening. He didn't want to jump to conclusions, but everything was falling into a terrifying pattern. He decided to find out more about this Liam. After Rachel fell asleep, Jason turned on his laptop and began searching social media. He found several profiles with that name, but one of them stood out. The man in the photo from the envelope. There weren't many public posts, but it was enough to deduce that Liam worked at a gym not far from their house. The next day, under the guise of a regular workout, Jason signed up for a session at the same gym. He spotted Liam almost immediately, tall, muscular, with a confident smile. Jason didn't want to draw attention to himself, but he decided to observe the man. Within minutes, Rachel walked into the gym. She greeted Liam in a way she hadn't greeted Jason in years. A light touch on his shoulder, a quick exchange of smiles. Jason felt his blood boil. He wanted to confront them right then and there but held himself back. He needed time to plan his next move. Returning home, he reopened the note from the envelope and, for the first time, noticed a small inscription on the back. This is just the beginning. Jason couldn't calm down after what he had seen at the gym. His thoughts raced chaotically between the urge to confront Rachel immediately and the need to act coolly and deliberately. He decided to keep observing, but to prepare more carefully this time. That night, he installed an app on Rachel's phone that allowed him to monitor her messages. The next day, Jason purposely stayed late at work. He knew Rachel often claimed to go out with friends, but this time the app showed something different. Her phone was near the gym, but it wasn't during regular workout hours. The messages told him everything. Liam, everything is ready. I'll be waiting for you at 7 p.m. Rachel, just don't be late like last time. I want this evening to be perfect. Jason decided to act. He found a cafe near the gym where Liam worked and parked himself there with a cup of coffee. Within minutes, he saw Rachel step out of her car, holding a small gift box. She entered the gym, and Jason, keeping a distance, followed her. Inside, he saw Liam waiting for her in one of the private training rooms. Their laughter echoed through the halls. Jason leaned against the wall, hiding behind the door. He overheard a snippet of their conversation. Rachel, I can't keep hiding this anymore. Jason has no idea. But you do understand how risky this is? Liam, you deserve better. Trust me, I'll fix this. Jason's heart sank. He pulled out his phone and snapped a few photos, though his hands were shaking. When he got home, he resolved to confront Rachel. She walked into the apartment smiling, but immediately noticed the tension in his expression. What's wrong, Jason? You look strange, she asked, sitting down on the couch. Rachel, I have a question. What were you doing this evening? I was with my friends, you know that, she replied without hesitation. Jason pulled out his phone and showed her one of the photos. Rachel turned pale. Her hands trembled as she tried to say something, but no words came. We've been living like this for months. I see how you've been drifting away, how you lie to my face. And now this. Explain this to me, Rachel. What does it mean? It's not what you think, she started, trying to regain control. And what am I supposed to think? Are you going to convince me this is innocent? She tried to change the subject, but Jason raised his hand to stop her. Don't. I want the truth. All of it. Rachel realized there was no escape. I don't know where to start. How about the beginning? When you decided I wasn't enough for you? She lowered her head and then answered, It's not about you. I didn't feel alive. With Liam, it was easy. He made me feel special. Special? And what about us? Did you think about me while you were spending time with him? She stayed silent, knowing that any word would only make things worse. Jason stood up and walked slowly to the window. Rachel, I want you to know something. I'm not the man you thought I was. And you'll realize that soon enough. He left her alone in the room, without explaining his next steps. The next morning, Jason woke up with a clear plan. He wouldn't let Rachel control his life anymore. Memories of their past, of the promises they'd made to each other, swirled in his mind, but now they only left a bitter taste. He got himself together and took action. The first thing he did was call his old friend Ben. Ben was a private investigator with a reputation for uncovering any information. Ben, it's Jason. I need your help, he began as his friend picked up the phone. Jason, man, it's been a while. What's going on? Ben's tone was as casual as ever. This is serious, Ben. I need you to follow Rachel and this guy, Liam. I need to know everything. Where they meet, what they talk about. Doesn't sound like much fun, but I'll do it. Send me everything you have, Ben replied without hesitation. Jason felt a sense of relief. Now he'd have more evidence than just a few photos. The next few days were tense. Jason played the role of the perfect husband, but inside, he was boiling with rage. Ben sent him reports. Rachel and Liam met at the same gym, sometimes went to cafes, and were even spotted leaving town together once. One evening, Ben sent something special, an audio recording. Jason put on his headphones and listened. Liam, I think it's time to tell him the truth. You can't live a double life forever. Rachel, I know, but it's hard. Jason doesn't deserve this. He's a good man. Liam, then why are you still with me? Rachel, because I'm happy with you. But I'm scared of the consequences. Jason leaned back in his chair, clenching his fists. He couldn't wait any longer. The next morning, he met Ben at a cafe. I have a plan, Jason said as Ben sat down. I'm listening, Ben replied briefly. We'll set it up so she confesses in front of him. Liam needs to see who she really is. Ben nodded and started discussing the details. A few days later, Jason invited Rachel to dinner at an upscale restaurant. She seemed surprised but agreed. What's the occasion? She asked as they sat at the table. I just want to spend the evening with you. Like old times, he replied with a warm smile, though inside he was seething with anger. Everything went according to plan. After dinner, Jason suggested they take a drive around the city. They pulled up to a hotel, the same one Ben had identified as the place Rachel and Liam often met. What are we doing here? She asked, her voice a little uneasy. Just wanted to check something, he replied as he got out of the car. Rachel didn't have time to say anything before he opened the door to one of the rooms, where Liam was already waiting. What is this? She whispered as she saw Liam. You tell me, Rachel. What is this? Jason's voice was cold. Liam started to say something, but Jason interrupted him. No, let her speak. Rachel, how long have you been lying to me? She tried to say something, but the words caught in her throat. Liam looked just as confused. You know what's funny? Jason continued. All this time, I knew. You thought I was blind? Rachel lowered her head, avoiding his gaze. Liam stayed silent, staring at her, waiting for an explanation. Jason, it's not what you think, she began. Oh, it's exactly what I think. And now, you stay with him. I'm done, he said coldly and walked out, leaving them alone. Jason felt a weight lift as he walked away from the hotel. It was up to them now. He had done his part. When he got home, Jason felt a sense of calm he hadn't experienced in a long time. He didn't fool himself into thinking it was all over, but the initiative was now in his hands. Turning off the lights in the living room, he noticed his phone buzzing. Rachel's name lit up the screen. He decided not to answer. Enough. This conversation no longer mattered. A day passed. Jason avoided going straight home after work to steer clear of any possible encounters with Rachel. He spent the evening at a bar with Ben, discussing his next steps. Are you sure you want to end this with a divorce? Ben asked, pouring himself a whiskey. Absolutely. She crossed every line. Now it's her choice to live with her decision, Jason replied, gripping his soda glass. But what about Liam? Ben asked, raising an eyebrow. I've already taken care of that. He knows what she's capable of now. That's his problem. The next morning, Jason headed to his lawyer's office. The divorce papers were ready, and he signed them without hesitation. When he returned home, he found Rachel waiting for him at the door. Her face looked tired, her eyes swollen from crying. Jason, please, we need to talk, she said, trying to stop him. We have nothing left to talk about, Rachel. It's all been said, and you know it, he replied, brushing past her and stepping inside. She followed him, trying to explain. It was a mistake. I was confused. I needed more attention. More attention? Jason cut her off sharply, turning to face her. You had everything you could have wanted, but it wasn't enough for you. I know, I made a mistake. But we can fix this, she pleaded. Jason pulled the documents from the folder he was holding and tossed them onto the table. This is how we fix it. Sign them. Rachel looked at the papers, then back at him. Do you really want to destroy everything? She asked, tears welling up in her eyes. You destroyed it, Rachel. I'm just putting an end to it, he replied coldly and walked to his room. Days passed. Jason kept his distance from Rachel, and she began staying away from home, giving him space. But one evening, he got an unexpected call. It was Liam. Jason, listen. I need to talk to you, Liam said hesitantly. What do we have to talk about? You've already taken my place. What more do you want? Jason snapped. It's not as simple as it seems. We need to meet. There's something you need to know. Jason hesitated for a moment. He wasn't interested in hearing excuses, but part of him wanted to know what Liam was up to. Fine. Tomorrow morning at the cafe on the corner of Chester Street. Don't be late, he replied curtly and hung up. The meeting took place the next day. Liam looked nervous. Jason maintained his composure, watching as the man shifted uncomfortably in his seat. What do you have to say? Jason asked, sitting down at the table. I didn't know Rachel was still married when we first started talking, Liam began, avoiding his gaze. Are you serious? And you believed a woman could just avoid mentioning her husband for no reason? Look, I admit I was wrong. But now I want you to know one thing. It doesn't matter anymore. I've ended it with her. Jason paused before replying. I don't care anymore. You both made your choices, and now I'm making mine. She tried to drag me into some kind of strange game, Liam added unexpectedly. A game? What do you mean? Jason asked, now intrigued. She wanted me to convince you of her innocence so you'd go back to her. I don't know why, but it seems she's more afraid of losing you than she's letting on. Jason shook his head, barely suppressing a laugh. How convenient. And now you're telling me this because I can see you're better than this. You deserve more, Jason, Liam said with a sigh. Jason stood up, looking down at Liam. You should have realized that earlier. Good luck. He left Liam sitting in the cafe and walked out, feeling as if another weight had been lifted off his shoulders. Jason walked away from the cafe, feeling strangely empty. Everything he wanted to know was now in front of him, but it brought no satisfaction. He walked down the street, trying to make sense of how Liam had changed his strategy and why Rachel was so afraid of losing him despite having destroyed their life together. When he returned home, Jason saw Rachel waiting for him again. This time, she looked even more dejected, with a bottle of wine on the table in front of her. "Are we doing this again?" he asked, tossing his coat onto a chair. "I just want to talk, Jason." "This is my last attempt," she replied, looking at him cautiously. He sat across from her, crossing his arms over his chest. "Fine, Rachel. I'm listening. But this time, no lies." She nodded, nervously gripping her glass. "I know this looks bad, and I'm not even asking for forgiveness because I understand it won't change anything. But you need to know why this happened." "Why? Because you decided our promises meant nothing?" Jason interrupted sharply. "No. It's because I didn't know how to talk to you about what was bothering me," she replied, staring into her glass. He sighed, trying not to explode again. "And you decided to find comfort in another man instead of just talking to me? Liam was a mistake, Jason. I was looking for someone who would listen to me because I felt like you stopped doing that a long time ago." Her voice trembled. "I stopped listening because you stopped being honest. This whole time, you were playing your game, thinking I wouldn't notice." Rachel looked up at him, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I know I destroyed our marriage, but I want to ask you for one thing. Don't do this out of hate." Jason looked at her, his eyes devoid of pity or compassion. "Hate? Rachel, I can't even hate you. I just don't want anything to do with you anymore." She fell silent, realizing there was nothing more she could say to change his mind. The next day, Jason filed for divorce in court. He didn't wait for Rachel to decide whether to sign the papers. Her choice no longer mattered. He had decided to start a new life and was ready to leave this chapter behind forever. After meeting with his lawyer, he received an unexpected call. It was Bella, his colleague, someone he occasionally talked to at work. She was one of the few who understood him without asking too many questions. "Hi, Jason. How are you?" she asked when he picked up. "I'm surviving. Though it's hard to call this living," he replied, smiling. "I thought maybe you'd like to grab a coffee or something. I feel like you could use a distraction." He hesitated for a moment and then agreed. "Coffee sounds good. Where should we meet?" They arranged to meet that evening at a small cafe. Bella was sitting by the window when he walked in. Her blonde hair fell softly over her shoulders, and her smile was so genuine that Jason felt relieved even before they started talking. "Feeling any better?" she asked as he sat down across from her. "Hard to say, but for the first time in a long while, I feel like I'm doing the right things." "That's the most important part," she nodded, handing him the menu. "You deserve a fresh start, Jason, and I'm sure you'll create it." Their conversation lasted for hours. They laughed, shared stories, and gradually opened up to each other more than ever before. Bella didn't judge him for his past, and that made their connection special. That evening, Jason realized that ending things with Rachel was only the beginning of something new. He left the cafe feeling that life, despite all its blows, could be better than he had ever imagined. In the weeks that followed, Jason felt freer than he had in years. He spent more time with Bella, who had become his pillar of support. Their meetups weren't just about coffee anymore. They went on walks and had dinners together. Her encouragement helped him navigate the divorce process. One evening, while they were sitting in her apartment discussing the latest news, Bella said thoughtfully, "Jason, you seem lost in thought again. Did something happen?" "It's just all this chaos with Rachel. It's exhausting. I thought filing for divorce would make it easier, but it's not so simple to close this chapter," he said, nervously spinning his wine glass in his hands. Bella leaned closer, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Is there anything I can do to help?" "You've already done more than I could ask," he smiled. At that moment, his phone buzzed. Rachel's name appeared on the screen again. He had been ignoring her calls for a week, but something made him pick up this time. "What do you want, Rachel?" His voice was cold. "Jason, please hear me out. It's important." Her voice trembled, and that surprised him. "I've already heard everything. What do you want?" He tried to cut the conversation short. "It's not about us. It's about you. I need to see you." "Speak plainly," he ordered, feeling the tension return. "I can't say this over the phone. Come to our house." "It's important," she almost begged. Jason hesitated, but something in her tone made him agree. When he entered the house, Rachel was already waiting for him. Her face was pale, and she was holding a stack of papers in her hands. "What's this?" he asked, noticing how nervously she gripped the documents. I don't know how to tell you this, but it's about Liam," she began. "Him again?" "Rachel, I don't care about him," Jason replied sharply. "You should care," she said, handing him the papers. Jason took them and began reading. It turned out Liam wasn't just a trainer. He was involved in a fraudulent scheme, using his connections to lure women into financial scams. Rachel was one of his victims. "He convinced me to invest money, promising big returns. This was before you found out about us. I thought it would help us financially, but it turned out to be a trap," she confessed, her voice breaking with shame. "And now you want me to what? Help you get your money back?" His voice was laced with sarcasm. "No, I know the money is gone, but I want you to know it wasn't just betrayal. I became a victim, and now he might hurt someone else." Jason felt conflicted. It was hard to feel sympathy for Rachel, but the thought of Liam using others infuriated him. "What do you want me to do?" he asked, finally focusing on her. "Help expose him. You have more resources, more connections. We can stop him together," she pleaded, her eyes filled with desperation. "Together? That word doesn't mean anything for us anymore, Rachel. But if he's truly a fraud, I'll find a way to stop him," Jason replied, taking the documents with him. He returned home and immediately called Ben. "Ben, I need your help again. I've learned something about Liam. I need to verify the information," he said, briefly explaining the situation. "This just keeps getting more interesting." "All right, I'll see what I can find," Ben replied. Over the next few days, Jason and Ben worked on gathering evidence. Ben discovered that Liam had been involved in several similar scams in the past, but had always managed to avoid consequences. One morning, Jason received a call from Ben. "I have an idea on how to catch him," Ben said. "I'm listening. We could set a trap. You mentioned he has other victims? We'll find someone willing to testify and trick him into making a mistake," Ben suggested. "And if that doesn't work?" Jason asked. "Then we'll find another way. But I'm confident he feels untouchable," Ben replied. Jason agreed. Their plan began to take shape. He no longer thought of Rachel as someone worth saving, but he was determined to stop Liam so that others wouldn't fall victim to him. The next day, Jason and Ben finalized their plan. Ben found a woman named Carla, who had previously fallen victim to Liam's schemes, but had never reported it to the police out of fear and shame. She agreed to help with their operation, though she was hesitant. "Are you sure this will work?" Carla asked, sitting at the table in Ben's small office. "Liam thinks he's invincible. We'll make him take a step that will become undeniable evidence," Ben replied. Jason nodded. "Your role is crucial, Carla, but we'll be nearby and won't let anything go wrong." They planned a meeting with Liam at a cafe, where Carla would pretend to be interested in investing money in one of his schemes. Ben set up hidden cameras and microphones to capture everything. On the day of the meeting, Jason sat in a nearby room, monitoring everything in real time on his laptop. He watched as Carla nervously played her role while Liam, as always, appeared confident and charming. "So, you want to invest?" Liam asked, smiling. "Yes, I've heard it's very profitable," Carla replied, trying not to reveal her tension. "That's the right decision. I'll help you succeed. You just need to deposit the initial amount into this account," he said, handing her a fake contract. Jason's hands clenched into fists. He could see how effortlessly Liam manipulated Carla. But then, something went off script. "Liam, are you sure this is safe?" Carla asked. "Absolutely. You can trust me," he replied, but his eyes caught a glint on her jacket. A microphone. Liam's demeanor changed. His smile vanished, replaced by a sharp, suspicious look. He pushed back from the table and asked abruptly, "What's this?" Carla froze, unsure how to respond. "What's going on? Is this some kind of game?" he continued, glancing around the room. Jason immediately left his monitoring room and headed to the cafe. He walked in just as Liam stood up from his seat. "What are you doing here?" Liam asked, seeing Jason. "Just watching your little scheme fall apart," Jason replied confidently, stepping closer. Liam looked around nervously, but at that moment, two men entered the cafe. They were Ben's team. Liam, this is the end. We've recorded everything. All your scams. You won't get away this time, Jason said, holding up his phone with a live feed of the conversation. You have no right to do this, Liam shouted, but his voice had already lost its strength. We have more than you think, Ben said as he entered right behind them. The police are already on their way. Liam tried to flee, but Ben and his team blocked the exits. It ended with Liam being taken into custody, not even attempting to defend himself. After Liam's arrest, Carla thanked Jason and Ben for their help. You've given me a chance to start over, without this nightmare, she said, hugging Ben. Jason returned home feeling like he'd made the right decision. But waiting for him was another unexpected moment. A note from Rachel lay on the table. Jason, I know you'll never forgive me, but I want you to know I'll always regret my mistakes. I hope you find what I couldn't give you. Rachel. Jason read the note several times, then crumpled it and threw it in the trash. He would no longer let the past dictate his future. The next morning, he met Bella for breakfast. What's on your mind? She asked, noticing his thoughtful expression. I was just thinking that I can finally move forward. And it's thanks to you, he said, looking into her eyes. Well, shall we start building a new life? Bella smiled, extending her hand. Let's do it, Jason replied, touching her hand and realizing that a new chapter had truly begun. Jason sat in a cafe, trying to relax, but his thoughts wouldn't let go. The past hadn't fully let him go, and despite the victory over Liam, he felt there were unresolved issues in his life. Bella seemed like a support, but was he really ready for a fresh start? Jason, are you upset about something? Bella asked, sitting across from him and watching his pensive expression. I'm just thinking about everything that happened, he replied cautiously, meeting her eyes. It's hard to let it all go. You know what happened with Rachel and Liam? I understand, she smiled, though her gaze was full of concern. But you found a way forward. Liam is in jail, and Rachel is left with those who betrayed you. None of this is your fault. I know, but I still feel like something's off. Maybe I'm overthinking it, Jason paused. I'm not even sure I'm ready to trust someone again. At that moment, a man in a dark suit entered the cafe. His face was familiar. Jason stiffened. That's the man who worked with Liam, he whispered, not taking his eyes off him. Bella glanced at him, but didn't notice anything suspicious. She smiled and placed a hand on his to calm him. Maybe it's just a coincidence. A lot of these people were once under Liam's control, she said gently. But Jason couldn't shake his suspicions. He stood up and moved toward the man, trying to remain inconspicuous. The man sat down at a table and pulled out his phone. Jason approached him, keeping his voice low. You have something to do with Liam, don't you? Jason whispered, staring directly into the man's eyes. The man looked up and smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. That's none of your business, the man replied calmly. But I can tell you something interesting if you really want to know. Jason leaned in, disbelief filling his expression. His heart raced. What do you want? He asked. Don't rush. You might be angry at Liam and Rachel, but there's something bigger you don't understand, the man said, glancing toward Bella, who was still sitting at their table. Jason turned to look at her and saw that she was watching him closely. But something about her expression made his heart sink. It wasn't just concern or curiosity. It was something else, something familiar. I understand you don't want me to interfere anymore, the man continued. But you don't know why Bella has always been by your side. She's the one who brought you here, to Liam and all of this. Jason felt the ground shift beneath him. He turned back to Bella, her face calm but her eyes filled with fear. Is this true? He asked, his voice heavy with disbelief. Bella couldn't answer, but her silence was the answer he dreaded. She looked up at him and said quietly, I didn't want you to find out this way, but yes, Jason, I was part of the plan. Not in the way you think, but I couldn't refuse Liam's demands. He blackmailed me. I couldn't leave you, but I couldn't abandon my principles either. You're the first person I genuinely wanted to help. Jason felt his heart breaking. He couldn't understand why this was happening. She had always been the one he trusted. Do you know how hard this has been for me? He asked, struggling to hold back his emotions. And now you're telling me you were part of all this? Bella avoided his gaze, her voice trembling on the verge of tears. I couldn't tell you before, Jason. I didn't want you to turn away from me. But now, I want to do everything I can to make it right. The man in the suit stood up at that moment and approached the table. I think you've figured out everything you need to know, he said. Liam had his plan, and now you're all part of his game. If you want to learn more, we can arrange a meeting with him. Jason felt like he was standing on the edge of a terrifying reality, but he couldn't allow himself to back down. Where is Liam? He asked, turning to the man. He's waiting. But I don't think you want to meet with him, Jason. It might be too late for you. I'm going anyway, Jason decided. I need to know the truth. He looked at Bella, who stood there silently, unsure of what to say. She was part of this game, and he didn't know if he could ever forgive her. But he had already made up his mind. If he had to face Liam again, he would be ready. Jason felt the blood drain from his face. He stared at Bella, unsure if she was truly on his side or just another piece in the puzzle. She stood before him, her head bowed, silent, as if afraid to say more. Are you telling me you were with him? He asked, barely holding back his anger. You were part of what he planned? Bella sighed, her voice weak and trembling. Jason, I didn't want this to happen. I didn't want to deceive you. But Liam forced me. He knew about my past. He knew my weaknesses. He threatened you. Jason just stood there, staring at her. His mind couldn't process how this had happened. How the woman he trusted more than anyone could have been part of this terrible plan. How did he force you? He asked coldly. You could have come to me, talked to me, done something. You could have chosen me. Bella lowered her head even further, her eyes filled with regret. I didn't know what to do, Jason. You don't understand. I was trapped. Liam made it so I couldn't just walk away. He took control of everything, and I was afraid you'd get hurt if I decided to tell you everything. Jason sighed heavily. His heart felt stolen, every part of his body weighed down by the pain of betrayal. This wasn't just a coincidence. It was a game, one in which he'd become a piece in someone else's script. You didn't even try to fight back, did you? You just gave in to him, he said, his voice cool and disappointed. Did you even think about how this would affect me? Bella stepped closer, but Jason stepped back. He didn't want to hear her. His heart couldn't take the truth. I'm not asking you to forgive me, she said quietly. I just want you to know the truth, and I'm ready to make it right. Jason looked at her with despair. How? How do you plan to make it right? Is there anything you can do to fix this? Bella pulled out her phone and tapped a few buttons. Within seconds, a video appeared on the screen. She showed it to Jason. He watched, his heart sinking even further as he saw what was on the screen. Liam was sitting in a cafe with Rachel, the same woman Jason had once loved and thought he'd left behind after her betrayal. This can't be true, Jason whispered, but he couldn't ignore what he saw. Rachel and Liam in each other's arms. They were exchanging kisses. This happened after you decided to give Rachel another chance, Bella said. She was using you. Liam was helping her. You were just a part of their bigger game. She was cheating on me with him. Jason felt like the ground was slipping from beneath his feet. You knew about this? Bella nodded slowly and heavily. I knew that Liam and Rachel were working together, but I didn't know how deep it all went. They planned to use you, Jason. You were part of their plan from the very beginning. Jason couldn't believe his ears. It was too much for him. All those months, every step, every shared moment with Rachel. It had all been part of her manipulations. Why didn't you tell me this earlier? He asked, his voice shaking with anger. Bella raised her eyes, full of regret. I was scared. I was scared you wouldn't understand, that you wouldn't forgive me for what I had already done. But I couldn't stay silent anymore. I wanted you to know the truth. Jason lifted his head, feeling something inside him shift. He decided. This was his trial. He couldn't stay in the shadows of this game any longer. But was he ready to turn this new page in his life? I'm going to see Liam anyway, he said firmly. And you're coming with me. Bella looked at him in surprise. How can you? Are you planning to talk to him? Yes, I want to hear the truth. Everything he's been hiding from me. And why my wife was part of this. I want him to see that I'm not the man I used to be. I won't let myself be manipulated anymore, Jason said. Bella took a step back, preparing for what she knew would be a difficult conversation. But it's dangerous, Jason. You don't know what he's capable of. I know, he replied, but I have to do this. If I let this go, it will destroy me, and I can't be weak anymore. They drove together, not knowing what lay ahead, but Jason was no longer afraid. He was ready to face the truth, even if it was bitter. During the drive, Bella remained silent. Jason thought about everything that had happened and couldn't understand why it had all happened to him. But now he knew he couldn't just forgive what had been done. When they arrived at Liam's, he greeted them calmly, but Jason immediately noticed something suspicious in his eyes. Liam knew this wasn't just a casual visit. He tried to hide his unease but couldn't. You want to talk to me? Liam asked, looking slightly relaxed but with an undertone of anxiety. Yes, I want to hear the truth. Everything you've been hiding, and why my wife was part of this. Liam smirked, but his smile was sinister. The truth, Jason, isn't quite what you think. Jason stood before Liam, his heart pounding. He didn't know what to expect. Liam remained calm, as though he'd been playing a game this whole time, one he alone controlled. Jason felt his emotions shifting, but he was still determined to find answers. The truth? Jason repeated, closing the distance between them. What do you mean? Liam raised an eyebrow, smiling with a hint of something troubling. Do you think Rachel and I did all this just for fun? Liam asked. It was only part of a bigger strategy. This wasn't just betrayal. It's something more. Jason felt as though his world was crumbling with every word, and at the same time, he sensed he didn't yet understand everything. A bigger strategy? Are you serious? He asked, confused by this tangled web of manipulation and deceit. Yes, Liam said, suppressing a laugh. Rachel and I have been working together. We had a plan from the very beginning. And honestly, I don't think you'll ever fully understand the big picture. Jason tried to piece together his scattered thoughts, which now felt like grains of sand in the wind. This was just part of his struggle, and he felt as though he couldn't see the full truth yet. Are you joking? This was all just a game? Liam only smiled and said nothing. His silence was louder than any words. Jason felt his chest tighten with anger and disappointment. He was ready to turn and leave it all behind, but it was hard to let go of the illusion he had clung to for so long. A few days later, Jason decided to give Rachel another chance. He thought again about her face, their shared moments, and as painful as it was, he tried to return to her. They met at a cafe. Rachel looked as though time hadn't touched her, but Jason felt everything was different now. I want to try again, he said, trying to be honest. You and Liam? I don't know why, but I want to go back to what we had. Rachel looked at him, her gaze softening. Jason, I don't know if this is the right thing to do. We've been through so much. And honestly, I'm not sure if you'll ever be able to trust me again. Jason looked into her eyes, feeling the weight in his heart only grow heavier. They tried to find the words, but there was more shadow than light in their actions. I can't just leave you like this. I want us to be together. But the more they tried, the more they realized that something between them had changed forever. Rachel couldn't bring back the time when their relationship was what it used to be. She longed for independence, and Jason kept searching for something that had already been lost. A few weeks later, Jason realized he couldn't go back to what they had. He decided he needed to move forward. But that didn't mean he would be alone. One day, he met Bella again. She was different, with a more mature outlook, free of the manipulations that had once surrounded her. She was honest, and though he didn't know if that meant he could trust her again, he felt there was a chance for a new beginning. Jason, I want you to know that I'm truly sorry for everything, Bella said. Maybe I don't deserve a second chance, but I'm willing to work on myself. Jason looked at her, but it wasn't the same. He wasn't sure about his feelings, but he felt like he was standing before a new choice. He didn't respond. Maybe he wasn't ready for this yet. Jason went home and sat on the couch. He didn't know what was next, but he felt like all the clear boundaries in his life had disappeared. Everything was uncertain now. Who did he really matter to? And who did he truly love? And perhaps the answer was only in his heart, a heart that wasn't ready for any decisions just yet. What would you do in Jason's place? Try to rebuild the relationship with Rachel or leave her in the past?